Hey everyone, Reid Henrichs of Valor. What we're going to do in this video today is I'm going to show you how to break down 1911 pistol, clean it, and lubricate it. Let's go ahead and get started. Now to begin with, folks, the easy breakdown. This is for a 1911 with a bushing. I know there are 1911s out there that don't have a bushing on them, that they have the more the bull barrel thing, and you have to consult your instruction manual on how to do that. This is the traditional 1911, the standard design, the one how John Browning designed it with that bushing, more of a standardized pistol as opposed to a custom one. So show you guys that breakdown. There's a couple of differences between 1911 and maybe other pistols that you use, like your striker guns, your double action, single actions, but nonetheless it's a very easy breakdown, and I'll show you how to lubricate that as well. And before anything, the 1911 has more friction on it than other pistols do. For example, your Glock, your M&P, or your H&K guns. There's a lot of surface area on this pistol that needs to be lubricated. There's a ton of friction on it, and we need to minimize that friction so that they'll continue to run properly. So let me go ahead and get on tabletop for you and break this down. All right, guys, we're going to clean our 1911 here. Now, just like anything that you want to do with your firearm, whether you're cleaning it, whether you're dry firing, the first thing you want to do is make sure that the pistol is unloaded. So drop your magazine and put it away. On a 1911, guys, we have to have the safety off in order to manipulate the pistol. So I'll lock it back, and what you can see here is I'm looking to make sure the magazine well is clear, looking to make sure the chamber is clear. And I like to check twice just because, make sure nothing else sneaks in there on us. So empty magazine well, empty chamber. Now I know that the pistol is clear. So what I want to do is, if you can get close on this 1911, what you're going to see, what we have to do, folks, is we have to make sure that we line up this slide stop with this. But to make your life a lot easier, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the tension off of this slide, which means we're going to have to remove the recoil spring, and we're going to have to take all that tension off. So what you want to have to do here is you can push in on this little, on it right here, push in, and then we're going to rotate the bushing. Make sure that you're either wearing iPro or making it facing away from you. I always just move it away from me. So turn that bushing to the other side, take that out. Then what we do is we rotate that bushing over just like that, and it will pull straight out. Now what I can do is I can use this pistol and move it a lot easier and not have that recoil spring in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it so that the notch is right there, and then what I need to do is I'm going to push on the slide stop, or this lever right here. So just push in, and that will move it there, and we have to manually pull this whole piece out. Then what will happen is we can take the slide off of the pistol and your guide rod, and then to get the barrel out, we have to rotate the little, we have to rotate this all the way down and then just pull the barrel straight out just like that. Pistol is disassembled, right? So not too hard. Now what I'm going to do is first of all I'm going to put some cleaner on there. Now since I'm inside my classroom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the environmentally friendly SC14 gun cleaner. A buddy of mine sent me this, Andrew. He's a naturalized US citizen from Northern Ireland, Ulster man, right? So what we need to do is we need to make sure that whatever gun cleaner that you use, just give it a good spray down. So what I like to do is start with the frame, and we'll just spray down our parts, and we can go from there. I also get the bushing, spray all that. I'll have links in the description box for all my cleaning products, guys, like your patches, your brush, your bore snake, your lubrication, all that. And then what we're going to do is just give it a nice spray. Some people like to spray down into the chamber in the barrel. Easy stuff. And then what we're going to do is spray onto the slide and make sure that that solvent gets time to work. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get some patches, and you can even put more solvent on the patches if you'd like. And then we're just going to wipe some stuff down. I like to let the solvent have its effect. I like to let it sit for a little while, so I give it a little bit of time here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the slide, and I'm going to swab out all that stuff. You can see, obviously, I've been shooting this gun, and you can see that it has several hundred rounds through it. Probably got about 700, 800 rounds through it. And what I'm doing here, guys, is I'm just wiping out the inside. Now, if you get closer, on a 1911, you can see these grooves in the slide where the barrel locks up, these locking lugs in here. So what I'm going to do is, since I got a lot of powder in there, I'm going to take my AP brush. You guys have been in the military, understand what this is for sure. And I'm going to make sure that I get all that out of there, because if not, you know, it's going to cause friction, and it's going to maybe sometimes cause the gun not to lock into battery all the way if it gets fouled enough. So sometimes they can be stubborn. They can be real stubborn, if you can see in there. So what I'm going to have to do is kind of try to swab all that stuff out of there with a bristle brush. You can use a bronze brush too, but the nylon brush really works well. Now, I know on gun cleaning videos, guys, that, I mean, you kind of just zone out and listen to the soothing sounds of my voice. But there is a method to the madness, and I want you to make sure that you have to have a clean and lubed 1911. More lubed than clean, but I still want to take the opportunity to get all that unburnt powder. You can probably see some of those flakes of unburnt powder in the 1911. There's quite a bit of it in 45, so we want to make sure that we get all of it out of there. So I've pulled all of those granules out of those grooves. That's where you're going to have most of them inside this pistol. So I get those out of there. Bolt face, we want to make sure that we get that, and we want to make sure that we clean that bolt face as well. We want to check our extractor tension, make sure that it's there, and then get under that extractor with this, get all that grime and all that stuff out of the extractor underneath there, because we want to make sure our extractor is clear as well. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling, once again, a lot of that unburnt powder, and there's a ton of it in there because I shot quite a few rounds through this gun, and it's going to be a ton of powder. Did a good job on that, so I got most of it out. So then what we're going to do is make sure that we wipe out any remaining stuff in there, and life is good for the slide. Now with the barrel, all I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe it down on the outside, get all that carbon off of there, make sure I get inside these lugs. You may have to hit it with the AP brush certain times, but most of the time we can just wipe that off with a patch and some solvent on there. So I'm making it pretty easy on myself here. One thing you really want to pay attention to is this inside here. We want to make sure that our feed ramps are nice and clean, nice and polished. And then once I get all that stuff out of there, and once I clean out all that carbon, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a bore snake, or whatever you use to punch the bore on this, because I want to make sure my chamber is clear of any grit or grime or anything. So you can put whatever solvent you want on your bore snake, and then we're going to drop it down just like this. And I do a couple of passes on it, make sure it's clear. But if I can look down there and I can see nice mirrored finish, just like you see here, I can see that nice clean mirrored finish, and that's enough for me. So the barrel is clean, the slide is clean. I keep everything in a clean pile together, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my frame right here. I'm going to wipe out all that stuff. Once again, unburnt powder in there. Really focus on the feed ramp going up here like this. We're going to make sure that those are clean, because that's where the barrel rests right there. It feeds up those rounds into there. We're going to make sure that that's clean, and we want to make sure that we're looking for cracks in our frame if possible. I don't see any here, but I'm always looking here, looking for excessive wear, looking for all that stuff. And then I just wipe down the whole frame with this patch. If you wanted to use that brush, once again, pull anything out of there that you can't reach with your hands or your patch, that works just fine. If you want to hit the magazine well too, sometimes grime and stuff will get in there, so I just take a look and make sure that it's clean, and it is. So I'm making sure that I get all this stuff out of there just like I would with my regular pistol. Now when it comes to the bushing, right, when it comes to the barrel bushing, a very important part of the pistol, this is where there is some friction, so we want to make sure that that's clean, free of debris. We want to make sure that we get inside these grooves and that we get inside anywhere else. Once again, I look inside the bushing, make sure that that's free of grime, any kind of unburnt powder, any kind of carbon, any of that stuff. You get it out of there. If it's got darker sludge, just get it out of there. Okay, so that's clean. Then I look at my slide stop, make sure that there's nothing crazy going on there. Everything looks good to me. Okay, so clean pile. My recoil, the guide rod, nothing to it. It's just a small little piece. And I wipe that down. And then of course your recoil spring and your retainer here. So We get all that done, so everything's clean. Everything is clean and scrubbed free of carbon and all that. So what I do now is I take a dry patch. Best way to buy these is true cotton patches. Once again, I'll have the link in the description box for that. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna wipe everything dry, because if we put solvent on there, we wanna make sure it's dry. Especially this natural stuff, rather, because that's not oil based, it's got all like the natural breakdown. I'll tell you, this stuff kills carbon. Like, this is a really good gun cleaner, and I've started to use it more and more. Some of you guys out there were concerned about my health with the hoppies solvent out there, so we're going like environmentally friendly inside the classroom. No oils. The only thing I regret is that it doesn't retain my natural scent, which is spent powder and gun oil. But I do get some nice orange fragrance out of there, right? So that makes life good. And of course, we just take the patches and we're just wiping everything dry. So if you put solvent on it, wipe everything dry, and you'll pull out more grime, more carbon, and everything else. Getting in between these grooves in the slide right here, make sure you get in between there. A lot of carbon, or a lot of unfired, unspent powder likes to hide in there, so we pull that out. Otherwise it'll get trapped. So I'm getting inside these grooves, and that's clean enough for me. And we want to make sure we wipe everything down. Don't spend a lot of time cleaning guns. I mean, we don't need to get into white glove inspection mode like some of you guys in the military have to deal with, and I had to deal with. But we don't need to have it lazy either. So I clean it to where I get all the major stuff and then carry on with life. So, same thing here on the frame. We want to wipe that dry, get it all inside there in the grooves. Because we want it dry, because that way when we apply our lubrication, it's going to stick on the metal better. Okay. Wipe your guide rod, wipe your bushing down so that it's dry. And anything we put solvent on, that's what we want to get. All right, so once I've done all that and all my parts are dry, which is what they are now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put lubrication on there. Now I know there's many different types that you guys can use and people do use. Back in the day, they used to run grease on these because it stays put and it works really well. They use grease on the M1s, and they also use grease on their 1911s, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to use grease, go ahead. I personally like this Slip 2000 EWL, and I like the EWL 30 because that stuff stays put as well. So the first thing that we're going to lube is we're going to lube the slide. And so what I like to do is I like to get on the inside of the slide, a couple drops, run it in, and then rub that in with your finger. And this is very important, guys. We want to get inside these grooves right here. We want to definitely make sure that those are lubed amply, right? So we want to make sure that that's there. Another important area right here, all in here where you see this friction, make sure that's there. And also on the back side right here, because that's where the hammer gets cocked, is on this right here. So I make sure that that's lubed. So we want to make sure that that gets, because that's the first thing that hits the hammer. We want to make sure that that's well lubricated as well. Like, you're not going to over lubricate your gun. A lot of people think that you can, but the truth of the matter is if the gun doesn't need it, it's going to pull it off of there, at least, you know, it'll fly it out of the action. You can't over lubricate them. Now on the barrel, guys, this is not like a Glock where we only have to lubricate the outer third. On the 1911 barrel, we want to make sure that we get the whole thing. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that there's a good amount of lubrication on that whole barrel. And then what I do is I lube these locking lugs just like this. And then you can go all over. Another very important part that we can lubricate is this right here. I want to make sure that that's lubed as well. So now that I've got the barrel and the slide good, I'm just going to put that back into together just like so. On the frame, what we're going to look for is I want to make sure that I get these rails nice and lubricated, all right, because there's a huge amount of friction on these rails. Very important part on your 1911, you want to lubricate right here. That gets a ton of friction as well, as you can see on the pistol. So we lubricate that little nubby. I'm getting real technical terms, huh? And we want to make sure we lubricate the rail again as well. Okay. Good. So that's about how heavily I lubricate my pistol. Barrel bushing. Definitely want to make sure we get lubrication inside there. And we want to go onto the inside because this is a friction, and you can put it on the outside as well. You cannot over lubricate these guys. If it doesn't need it, then it will throw it off of there. Reassembly. First things first, guys, what we want to make sure is that the easiest way to do this is going to be to put the slide together first. I mean, that's what you're going to have to do. So what we want to make sure that we do is that we put our stuff back together. Make sure you put your guide rod recoil spring like this, and we make sure that we put it down so that the little forks are on the barrel. We got to be very careful with our bushing. It goes in like this, and then we can rotate it over. All right, so what we got is everything together that we need. Everything's intact, is exactly where we need it to be. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back on the frame, and you need to line these up and then just move it back, nice and easy. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to lock it back. We're going to move it back to where we line those notches up just like we did for disassembly. And then we're going to line it up just like this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move our slide stop in. Lock it in place. Very important, you want to move the slide forward and make sure that it's captured. If it's not captured, it will keep moving forward. This is not moving forward, that means it's captured. So then what I'm going to do is put this all together, and once again, guys, either wear eye protection or move it away from you, and we're going to move the recoil spring down, and then what we're going to do is we're going to capture it with that bushing, and then we're going to finish the job just like that. Function check. Rack it, put it on safe, it should not fire. Put it on fire, pull and hold it, rack it, hold the trigger back, let it out, and it should work. Do it again, rack it there, and if you want to check the slide lock, slide release, it definitely works. I like a nice and lubricated 1911. You can wipe off any excess oil on there. I heavily lubricate this style of pistol, guys. Now, on my striker guns, on my Glocks, any of that stuff, I don't really lubricate it that heavy because it's not required. But a 1911, you definitely need to lubricate it to keep it running. Whenever I've used heavy lube on a 1911, I haven't had any issues with it. But if you don't, these typically will stop functioning due to a lack of lubrication. So that's how I do it. It's pretty slick. No friction, no catching. And like I said, fire a few rounds through it, it'll throw off all the excessive stuff that it doesn't need. So guys, that is a clean and lubricated 1911. It will run with you. It'll run. These things will run a long time if you clean and lube them correctly. They're not as finicky as people think. They're not as picky if you have heavy lubrication. A lot of times guys will dog on them, but they don't put any lube on them. They don't put any, and they certainly don't put it where it needs to be. They'll lube it like a Glock, or they'll lube it like a modern striker pistol. And that's just not the way it needs to happen. These things do need to be lubed in the places that I showed you. You can use the oil like I did, or you could use that grease in those exact same spots, and it's going to stay put and it's going to run for you for a while. If you found the information in the video helpful, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media. Link is in the description box below. And if you want to learn how to shoot your 1911, come on out to Valor Ridge and we can help you. This is Reid Henrichs, Valor Ridge, reminding you the lessons that we learn are written on the tombstones of others. We'll see you on the ridge.